"Take care of her as if she were your own," said the king as he gave the little girl to the widow. "Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from." Rain fell in fierce sheets over the narrow lanes of the Castilian village. The wind moaned through the olive trees, carrying with it the scent of wet earth and smoke from the chimneys. Inside a modest stone cottage at the edge of the vineyards, Isabel knelt by the hearth mending a woolen blanket. The fire burned low, a faint glow in the dark. Since her husband's death at the front, silence had become her only companion. The storm thickened. Then came the sound. Hooves, distant at first, then pounding nearer, urgent, uneven. Isabel froze. No traveller would ride at such an hour through that kind of weather. She rose and listened. The horse stopped just outside her door. A heavy knock, 3 times. She hesitated. Fear crept up her spine. Then a voice, hoarse and trembling, spoke through the wind. "Open! For mercy's sake, open!" Isabel lifted the latch. The door burst inward with a gust of rain. A man staggered in, wrapped in a torn cloak, his face half hidden beneath the hood. In his arms lay a small bundle. The man's hands shook violently. Blood stained his sleeves. "Saints preserve us," Isabel whispered. "You're hurt." "Do not call anyone," he said, his voice weak but commanding. "No one must see me." He sank to his knees, clutching the bundle against his chest. The child stirred, giving a soft cry. Isabel's eyes widened. "A baby?" He looked up. His face, though pale and drawn, carried a strange, unmistakable nobility. The eyes, grey, weary, filled with authority, met hers. "She must live," he said. "You will keep her safe." "Sir, I don't understand. Who are you?" He did not answer. Instead, he pulled back the blanket to reveal the infant's face. Rosy cheeks, lips barely parted in sleep, and eyes the color of the summer sky. "She is innocent," he murmured. "Whatever happens to me, she must not know fear." The wind rattled the shutters. Isabel, half frightened, half entranced, took the child in her arms. "She's so small, not more than a few months old." The man's shoulders sagged. "Swear to me," he whispered. "Take care of her as if she were your own." His words trembled through the room. Isabel's mouth opened to speak, but no sound came. She saw his hands, covered in royal embroidery now visible beneath the torn cloak. The seal of the crown. Her heart stopped. He noticed her gaze. "Say nothing of what you've seen tonight, not to priest or neighbor. Hide her, raise her as yours. If you do this, heaven itself will bless you." "Why me?" Isabel managed to ask. "Why my house?" He looked toward the door, as if listening for pursuit. "Because it is far from the roads of men," he said softly. "Because your heart is pure." Outside, thunder rolled across the hills. The man rose unsteadily. Isabel tried to help him, but he stepped back, gathering his cloak. "If they come," he said, "deny everything. They must never find her." "Who are you running from?" "From those who wear my name," he said bitterly. Then he looked at the child once more. His expression softened with a tenderness that tore at Isabel's heart. "Sleep well, my little one," he whispered. "May your dreams be free of crowns." Before she could ask another question, he turned, opened the door, and disappeared into the storm. Isabel stood motionless. The wind rushed in, scattering ashes from the hearth. The baby stirred and began to cry, a thin, plaintive sound. Isabel shut the door and pressed the child against her chest. Her hands trembled. "What have you brought me, Lord?" she whispered. She wrapped the child in a dry cloth and warmed a little milk. The baby calmed, drinking with tiny, greedy sighs. Her eyes fluttered open, bright blue, almost luminous in the firelight. Something inside Isabel melted. She had known loss, loneliness, hunger, but never this strange rush of purpose. The hours passed. The storm slowly receded. At dawn, a pale light crept over the hills, glinting off the wet vines. The horse tracks outside had nearly vanished beneath the mud. She cleaned the floor where the man had stood and found a torn scrap of silk that must have slipped from the blanket. Golden thread glimmered through it, forming part of an emblem, half a crown, half a laurel branch. She hid it quickly under the hearthstone, her heart pounding. When the child stirred again, she smiled despite herself. "You'll need a name," she murmured. I can't keep calling you little one. She thought of her late husband, who had died in the king's army, never to return. She had wept for him until her tears ran dry. Perhaps this child, given to her by that same fate, was heaven's answer to her prayers. "Sophia," she said aloud. "Wisdom. You'll be my Sophia." She spent the morning tending to chores, pausing often to watch the baby sleep. A strange peace filled the cottage, as though a blessing had settled upon it. Yet every time she glanced at the door, her stomach tightened with fear. By midday the sun broke through the clouds. The vineyards shimmered, silvered with dew. A few neighbors passed along the road, waving. Isabel nodded back, forcing a smile. She dared not speak of the night's events. When evening fell, she took out the cradle her husband had made years before and laid Sophia in it. The baby reached out, clutching Isabel's finger, and the widow felt a warmth she had not known since before the war. But peace, in times like these, was fragile. The next day the sound of distant hoofbeats returned. Steady this time, and many. Isabel stepped outside, shading her eyes. A line of soldiers rode into the village, their uniforms muddied but official, bearing the insignia of the crown. The villagers gathered in whispers. The soldiers dismounted, spreading out across the square. Their leader, a stern man with silver hair, spoke to the baker first, then to the blacksmith. Isabel watched from her doorway, clutching the frame. One of the soldiers noticed her and approached. "You there, good woman," he said, polite but sharp. "Has any traveler come this way last night?" Her mouth went dry. "A traveler? In that storm?" "None that I've seen, sir." He studied her face. "No rider? No stranger seeking shelter?" She forced a laugh. "Only the wind came knocking, Captain." He frowned but said nothing more. His men searched nearby stables, questioning others. The villagers speculated wildly. Some said the king himself had been ambushed, others that a traitor had fled through the hills. When the soldiers finally left, Isabel's knees gave way. She sank onto the step, trembling. In her arms, Sophia slept peacefully, unaware of the danger surrounding her. That night she could not rest. Every creak of the wood, every howl of the wind made her startle. She went again to the hearth, pried up the stone, and hid not only the silk scrap but the entire royal blanket beneath it. If anyone came searching, they would find nothing but a poor widow and her child. Weeks turned into months. The memory of that night faded among the villagers, replaced by the usual gossip about crops and taxes. Isabel's life resumed its quiet rhythm, though her eyes often strayed toward the hills where the man had vanished. One evening, while washing clothes by the stream, she heard two old men talking nearby. "They say the king is dead," one murmured. "Killed in some secret ambush." His line ended without an heir. "Bah," the other replied. "Kings never die without heirs. There's always another hidden somewhere." Their words chilled her blood. She returned home swiftly, holding Sophia tighter. The child grew stronger, more beautiful with each passing day. Her laughter filled the cottage, softening its shadows. Isabel began to think that perhaps the secret could remain buried forever, that the world would forget, and Sophia would live as any village girl. But fate, once stirred, seldom sleeps. One moonless night, Isabel awoke to the sound of footsteps outside. She crept to the window. Two figures moved along the path carrying lanterns. Voices, low but clear. They said she was seen near here. "If the child's alive, we'll find her. The king's blood must not vanish." Isabel's heart thundered. She blew out the candle and rushed to the cradle, gathering Sophia into her arms. The baby whimpered softly. She pressed a finger to her lips, whispering for silence. The footsteps stopped by her door. A hand tested the latch. She held her breath, praying they would leave. After a long moment, the steps moved away, fading into the distance. Isabel waited until she could no longer hear them before she dared to move. She sank to the floor, clutching the child, tears sliding down her cheeks. At dawn she went outside. The road was empty, but the prints of boots were clear in the mud leading toward the vineyards. She stood there a long time, her arms around Sophia, watching the rising sun turn the fields to gold. "Whoever you are," she murmured to the child, "whatever your past, I'll keep you safe, I swear it." A soft breeze stirred the vines, as if answering her vow. Yet even as she spoke, faint echoes drifted through the morning air. Hooves again, distant but growing louder, coming from the same direction as before. Someone was calling out, their voice carried by the wind. "Find the infant! The king has fallen!" The shouts grew nearer that morning, echoing down the valley like a nightmare come to life. Isabel clutched Sophia to her chest and ran to the cellar. The baby whimpered softly as Isabel pulled the wooden hatch closed above them. The air below smelled of dust and apples stored from the harvest. She could hear the soldiers' voices outside, commanding, searching. "Every house!" one shouted. "The child must be found!" Boots pounded over the stones. Dogs barked in the distance. Isabel crouched against the wall, whispering prayers between her teeth. Sophia's tiny hand gripped her sleeve, warm and trembling. For hours, she waited. The noise moved from one end of the village to the other, and finally, silence returned. Isabel remained still, counting her breaths. When she was certain they were gone, she lifted the hatch and climbed out, her legs shaking. The road was littered with hoof prints. Neighbors stood outside, whispering to one another. Isabel forced herself to step into the light, acting as though nothing was amiss. "Did they come to you too?" asked old Matteo, the miller. "They asked about travelers," Isabel said, "but I told them I'd seen no one." He spat into the dust. "They say the king was betrayed. The French took him, now everyone's hunting ghosts." Isabel nodded, saying little. She returned home quickly, barred the door, and sank onto a stool, pressing Sophia close. "It's over now," she whispered. "We're safe, my darling." Days passed, and the soldiers never returned. The village slowly returned to its rhythm. Church bells, market days, gossip about the harvest. No one mentioned the missing child again. Isabel kept her secret locked tight behind her eyes. Years rolled quietly by. Sophia grew beneath the Castilian sun, running barefoot through the vineyards, chasing butterflies along the road. Her laughter filled the cottage. Isabel called her daughter, and soon everyone else did too. Sophia's hair darkened to a chestnut shade, but her eyes, those blue eyes, never changed. Sometimes they startled people. The baker's wife would comment, "Your girl has the eyes of heaven," and Isabel would smile politely, pretending not to tremble inside. Every Sunday they walked to the small chapel on the hill. Isabel sang softly during Mass, her voice carrying a note of sorrow that only Sophia seemed to hear. Afterward, they'd sit beneath the olive trees, sharing bread and stories of the husband and father Sophia never met. "Was he brave?" Sophia once asked. "The bravest," Isabel said, smiling. "He fought for Spain. Like the king?" The question pierced her. Isabel looked away. "Yes," she said finally. "Like the king." Sophia grew into a graceful young woman, slender and quick, with a smile that could still every quarrel in the village. She helped Isabel at the loom, weaving linen for the soldiers' uniforms, her fingers nimble, her song light. But sometimes, when she thought her mother wasn't looking, she would gaze out toward the road leading to the capital, her eyes full of wonder. "Mother," she asked one evening as they sat by the fire, "why do people in the village stare at me sometimes?" "Because you're beautiful," Isabel said. "No, not that," they whisper. "People always whisper." Isabel tried to laugh, but the sound came out thin. "Let them. We have work enough to keep our hands busy." Sophia smiled, yet her curiosity didn't fade. One afternoon, while sweeping the floor, she noticed a loose board near the hearth. When she lifted it, something soft brushed her fingers. A piece of cloth, old but fine. She pulled it free. It was a blanket, embroidered with golden thread. The crest was faint, but still visible, a crown entwined with a laurel. Sophia's breath caught. She had seen that symbol once, carved above the door of the governor's house. Her hands trembled. "Mother!" she called. Isabel turned from the table, her face pale. "Where did you find that?" "It was under the floor." "What is it? Give it to me." Sophia hesitated. "It's royal, isn't it?" Isabel snatched the blanket and pressed it to her chest. "You were never meant to see this." "Then tell me why we had it." Isabel's mouth opened, but no words came. She sat down heavily, staring into the fire. "It's a relic from the war," she said finally. "A soldier left it behind." Sophia studied her. "That's not true. You're trembling." Isabel forced a smile that looked more like pain. "Please, child, don't ask me about this again." Sophia wanted to obey, but the question burned inside her. That night she dreamed of a man on horseback, his cloak torn, his face hidden, calling her name through a storm. The next morning, while tending the vineyard, she told her friend Clara about the dream. Clara laughed. "Maybe you're a princess cursed to live among peasants." Sophia laughed too, but uneasily. "If I were, I think Mother would have told me. Then perhaps she doesn't know." That afternoon, a new family arrived in the village. They came from the south, renting the large estate at the crossroads, the house that had stood empty since the war. The villagers gathered to watch their arrival. Among them was a young man with an air of quiet authority, his left arm in a sling, his uniform faded but well kept. "That's Don Rafael de la Vega," Mateo whispered to Isabel, "an officer wounded near Salamanca. They say he's here to recover." Isabel said nothing, but her eyes lingered on him for a moment. There was something in his expression, dignified, weary, and kind. Over the following weeks, Rafael became a familiar sight. He walked through the vineyards with a cane, greeting the villagers, helping where he could. He was courteous to Isabel and often spoke with Sophia when he met her on the road. One afternoon he found her gathering herbs near the olive grove. "Señorita Sophia," he said with a smile, "you know these hills better than any map. Perhaps you can tell me where the stream begins." "I've lost my way again." She laughed softly. "The stream begins where patience ends, Don Rafael. Follow it long enough and it leads home." He smiled at her cleverness. "Then I will follow it as far as it leads." From that day, they spoke often about the land, the harvest, the long years of war. Rafael admired her honesty and the light in her eyes. Sophia found in him a gentleness rare among men who had seen battle. But Isabel watched from a distance, her heart torn between pride and fear. She had seen that same warmth once before, the look of a man who carried secrets too heavy to bear. Then one late afternoon, a stranger arrived at the tavern. He was tall, dressed in travel-stained clothes, his boots coated with dust. He ordered wine and sat near the fire, listening more than speaking. On the table before him, he placed a small wooden case. Inside it, the innkeeper caught a glimpse of gold. When asked his business, he said he was looking for someone. "A woman," he added, "and a child she once hid." The villagers fell silent. The stranger opened the case and showed them a miniature portrait, a baby wrapped in silk, blue eyes wide. "Whoever helps me find her," he said, "will be well rewarded." By evening, word had spread through every house in the village. Isabel heard it from the baker's wife. Her face drained of color. "What did he look like?" she asked. "Like a man who won't leave without what he's come for." When night fell, Isabel waited until the streets were empty. She covered her head with a shawl and walked quietly to the tavern. The stranger was still there, alone at a corner table. She approached cautiously. "I heard you're searching for a child." He looked up, his eyes sharp. "You know something?" "Only that children are many and hard to count," she said lightly. The man studied her face. "I am Captain Valdez," he said. "I serve the crown. The king left something behind before his death. A bloodline. I intend to find it." "After so many years?" she asked. "Some debts never fade. The child would be of age now. She was hidden by a woman in a small village, not unlike this one." Isabel forced herself to keep her voice steady. "And if you find her?" "She will be taken to Madrid," he said. "There are matters of succession still unresolved." He leaned closer. "Have you seen anyone with eyes like the sky after rain?" Isabel's pulse pounded. She shook her head. "No one." He smiled faintly, not believing her. "If you remember anything, you'll send word." When she left the tavern, her legs nearly gave out. She returned home through the shadows, praying Sophia was asleep. The girl was sitting by the fire, mending a torn sleeve. "Mother, you're pale. Are you ill?" Isabel forced a breath. "No, child, only tired." But that night she could not sleep. The image of the portrait haunted her. The same blue eyes, the same tiny face she had held on that stormy night long ago. Morning came. Isabel was stirring porridge when Raphael knocked softly at the door. "I beg your pardon," he said, lowering his voice. "A traveler has come asking strange questions. You should be careful." "I know," she said quietly. "I spoke with him." Raphael's brow furrowed. "He's dangerous, Senora. His questions are not idle." "If he suspects anything," Isabel looked toward the room where Sophia was still sleeping. "What would you have me do?" Hide whatever connects you to the past, he said. And if the worst comes, leave this place. Leave? This is our home. Better to lose a home than a life. He looked at her with sincerity that silenced her doubts. If you must go, I'll help you. She wanted to thank him, but words failed. That evening, Captain Valdez returned, this time not to the tavern, but to Raphael's house. They spoke briefly. No one heard what passed between them, but Valdez's face was grim as he left. When Raphael came later to Isabel's cottage, his expression was troubled. He suspects, he said. He asked directly about you. He'll come here soon. Then what shall we do? He hesitated, then said firmly, Pack what you can carry. At dawn, you must flee. I'll ride with you. Isabel felt the room spin around her. She turned to look at Sophia, who had just stepped from her room, her hair loose, eyes wide. Mother? What's happening? Isabel swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. We're leaving, my love, before the soldiers come. Soldiers? Raphael met Sophia's gaze. They know something. You must flee before it's too late. The sky was still dark when Isabel woke Sophia. The house was silent except for the sound of the wind brushing the vines. Raphael waited outside with 2 horses, cloaked and ready. His face was pale from sleeplessness, but his voice was calm. We must leave before first light, he said. The captain's men are already watching the road to Burgos. Isabel nodded, her hands trembling as she packed a few belongings, a loaf of bread, a flask of water, and the small wooden cross from the wall. Sophia, half awake, clutched her shawl and whispered, Mother, where are we going? Somewhere safe, Isabel said. Don Raphael will guide us. Sophia looked at him uncertainly, but his steady gaze reassured her. We'll go south through the hills, he said. There's an old monastery beyond the olive groves. It's abandoned now, but it will give us shelter. They mounted quickly. Isabel's heart ached as she looked back at the little cottage, the only home she had ever known, now nothing but a shadow in the mist. She whispered a prayer and urged her horse forward. They rode in silence as dawn broke over the fields. The road curved between vineyards heavy with dew. The scent of the earth rose with the morning light. Sophia turned once toward her mother. Will we come back? Isabel hesitated. If God allows. By midday they had reached the woods. Raphael guided them off the main path, stopping often to listen. His expression grew darker each time he heard a distant echo of hooves. They crossed a shallow river and rested briefly beneath the trees. Sophia shared the bread with him. Why are they after us? She asked. He looked down at the water. Because someone believes your life has more value than your freedom. She frowned. That makes no sense. It rarely does, he said quietly. Power blinds men more than gold. When they continued, Isabel's strength began to fail. The journey was harder for her than she admitted. Her face grew pale, and her hands trembled as she held the reins. Raphael noticed and slowed his pace. Rest a while, he said. We'll stop by that ridge. They dismounted near a cluster of rocks. Sophia helped her mother sit. Isabel tried to smile. I'm only tired. I'll be fine. Raphael fetched water from a spring and offered it to her. You've ridden far enough for today. No, Isabel said. If we stop, they'll find us. They'll find us sooner if you fall from exhaustion, he replied gently. Sophia glanced between them, anxiety tightening her chest. How much farther is this monastery? 2 hours, Raphael said. Once we reach it, you'll both be safe. I give you my word. The road narrowed into a rocky trail bordered by wild rosemary. The sun dipped low, staining the hills with a faint glow. As evening came, they reached the ruins of the old monastery. Its walls were cracked, but the bell tower still stood against the sky. Inside they found shelter in what had once been the refectory. Dust covered the floor, and ivy crawled along the windows, but it was dry and quiet. Raphael lit a small fire from fallen branches. Sophia spread a blanket for her mother. Isabel lay down, pale and silent. Her breathing was shallow. Raphael looked at her with concern. She's weaker than she lets on. I know, Sophia said softly. She's been ill for weeks, but she hid it. He knelt beside Isabel. You should rest. I'll keep watch. Isabel opened her eyes, searching his face. You've done too much already, Don Raphael. You owe us nothing. I owe you the truth, he said. And I owe her safety. Later that night, as the fire burned low, Sophia and Raphael spoke quietly. You knew this captain before? She asked. I served under him once, Raphael said. He's loyal to the crown, but loyalty can turn cruel when ambition feeds it. Sophia watched the flames flicker. You think he'll find us? He will try, Raphael replied. But I won't let him take you. His tone was firm, but Sophia caught something beneath it. Fear, not for himself, but for her. She didn't understand why this man, almost a stranger, would risk so much. When dawn came, the fire had died. Isabel was still asleep. Raphael stepped outside to watch the road. From the tower, he saw movement in the distance, a small group of riders cutting across the plain. He returned quickly. They're coming. Sophia looked at her mother, then at him. We can't move her. She's too weak. I'll lead them away, Raphael said. You hide here. Don't leave until I return. No, Isabel whispered, struggling to sit up. You'll be caught. He shook his head. They're looking for a woman and a young girl, not for a soldier traveling alone. I can delay them. Sophia reached for his hand. You can't go alone. He met her eyes. You must trust me. He saddled his horse and rode down the hill, his figure soon lost among the olive trees. Sophia helped her mother sit against the wall. Isabel's skin was cold, her lips pale. He'll be back, Sophia said, though her voice trembled. He promised. Hours passed. The air grew still. Distantly, the sound of horses drifted up, then faded. The sun slid low and shadows lengthened inside the ruined hall. Isabel's breathing grew ragged. Mother, drink, Sophia said, offering water. Isabel smiled faintly. You've grown strong. I always knew you would. Don't talk like that. You'll get better. There's something I must tell you, Isabel whispered. Something I should have told you long ago. Sophia shook her head, frightened. Please, not now. Isabel's eyes filled with tears. The night your father died, I thought I'd never live again. Then a man came to my door, a man with eyes full of sorrow. He gave me a baby and begged me to keep her safe. That baby was you. Sophia froze. No. Isabel's voice faltered. He said the world would hunt you if it knew your name. I didn't believe him, not then. But he was the king, Sophia. Fernando himself. The words struck like thunder. Sophia stared at her mother, unable to breathe. The king. That's impossible. I swear it, Isabel said. He was wounded, desperate. He said you must live free of the crown's shadow. I took you as my own. I never told you because I feared this day. Tears filled Sophia's eyes. You should have told me the truth. I wanted you to have a simple life, one of love, not power. Forgive me, child. Sophia clung to her. You are my mother, whatever he was. Isabel's breath grew shallow. If I do not wake again, promise me you'll run, promise you'll live. Don't speak like that. I need your word. Sophia nodded through her tears. I promise. Outside, hooves thundered again. Raphael burst through the doorway, breathless. They've searched the valley, we must move now. He knelt beside Isabel, his voice low. Can you stand? She shook her head weakly. Go. Take her. I won't leave you, Raphael said. You must. Her hand gripped his wrist with surprising strength. Promise me, Don Raphael, protect her as I did. He bowed his head. I promise. Sophia clung to her mother. I won't leave you. You must, my love. You carry more than my heart. You carry his name. Keep it hidden, and one day it will no longer bind you. Raphael pulled Sophia gently away. Tears ran down her face, but he held her firm. We'll return for her, he whispered. They left through the back gate, the moon rising above the hills. Sophia looked back once to see her mother's still form beside the fire, her lips moving in silent prayer. They had just reached the ridge when voices shouted behind them. Torches glimmered in the dark. They've found the monastery, Raphael said. We must hurry. They climbed the rocky slope, branches tearing at their clothes. Sophia stumbled, and he caught her hand. Below, the soldiers entered the ruins, calling orders. Search everywhere, the girl is here. Sophia's chest burned with grief and fear. My mother, she wanted you to live, Raphael said. Don't waste her gift. They reached the crest of the hill. From there, Sophia could see the valley bathed in moonlight. The wind carried the faint toll of a bell, the monastery's old bell ringing though no hand touched it. She turned toward Raphael, tears streaking her face. What will we do now? He looked down at her, his jaw set. We'll find shelter until morning, then we'll go south again. I gave her my word. She stared at him, barely able to speak. What word? He met her gaze with solemn eyes. If I do not wake, promise me you'll protect her. For she is the king's child. The morning came grey and cold. Mist clung to the hills, swallowing the monastery below. Sophia sat on a flat rock, her face pale from grief. Raphael stood beside her horse, checking the saddlebags. Neither had slept. She's gone, isn't she? Sophia asked, her voice faint. Raphael turned toward her. I went back before dawn. She was at peace. She wanted you far from there. Sophia pressed her hands together. I should have stayed with her. She wouldn't have allowed it, he said softly. Her last thought was of you. They rode in silence, taking narrow paths through the olive groves. Sophia's eyes stung, but no tears came. Her heart was heavy, yet somewhere beneath the sorrow burned a new strength, as if her mother's courage had passed into her. By midday they reached a valley dotted with whitewashed farms. Raphael stopped to water the horses near a small chapel. We'll rest here, he said. Sophia knelt at the chapel steps. If God spared me when he took her, it must be for something, she murmured. Raphael didn't answer. He was watching the road below. A small group of riders was moving toward them. 3 men, one wearing a dark cloak. Get inside, he said quickly. They hid in the chapel's shadow, peering through a crack. The riders halted at the stream. One of them, the cloaked man, dismounted. Even from afar, Raphael recognized him, Captain Valdez. They've followed us, he whispered. Valdez spoke briefly to his men, then pointed up the hill toward the chapel. Sophia's heart leapt. Raphael grabbed her hand. Run! Through the back door. They slipped out the rear, crossing a small garden and a low wall. Their boots sank into damp earth as they ran through the olive trees. Behind them came shouts and the sound of horses. Faster, Raphael said. There's a farmhouse ahead. They reached it just as the first riders appeared on the ridge. An old farmer opened the door at Raphael's call. For God's mercy, Raphael said. We need shelter. Just for a moment. The man hesitated, but seeing the fear on Sophia's face, he nodded and led them inside. His wife handed Sophia a cloak to hide her dress. They hid in the hayloft while the riders thundered past outside. Sophia held her breath, her hand gripping Raphael's arm. Will they search here? She whispered. He shook his head. They'll keep to the road. They think we're heading south. After an hour, the sound faded. The farmer brought them bread and water. The captain's been asking questions in every village, he warned. He says a young woman's to be taken to Madrid by royal order. Raphael thanked him and left some coins on the table. If anyone asks, you saw no one. As night fell, they found a small inn near Toledo. Raphael rented a single room under false names. Sophia sat by the window, watching the lights of the town. What will happen if he catches us? She asked. He won't, Raphael said. Not while I draw breath. She turned to him. You risk too much for me. He met her eyes. Your mother's faith deserves more than fear. For a long time they said nothing. The air between them felt heavy with things neither dared to speak. When Sophia finally lay down, she whispered, If we survive this, I'll rebuild her house. I'll make it as it was before the war. You'll have your peace again, Raphael said. I promise. Days passed as they moved from village to village, never staying long. They disguised themselves as a merchant and his sister. Raphael kept his injured arm in a sling to complete the illusion. One evening they reached a quiet market town near Madrid. The bells of a nearby convent tolled faintly. Raphael sold his horse to avoid drawing attention. As they walked through the square, Sophia noticed a poster nailed to a wall. It bore a royal seal and a description of a young woman of noble appearance, suspected of treason. That's me, she whispered. Raphael tore the paper down and threw it into a puddle. He's desperate. The truth must be dangerous for him to chase you so hard. But why? She asked. If I'm the king's child, wouldn't he want to protect me? Not if your existence threatens another's claim, Raphael said grimly. There are those who profit from power's silence. That night they found shelter in a chapel on the outskirts of the town. The priest, a kind old man, welcomed them when Raphael said they were pilgrims. Sophia knelt before the altar, whispering her mother's name. Raphael watched her from the doorway. The candlelight touched her hair, turning it to gold. When she rose, he offered her a hand. "You still believe we can escape them?" she asked. "I have to," he replied. "If we lose hope, we lose everything." Before dawn, they left the chapel and headed north again. The air was sharp with the smell of winter. Sophia wrapped her cloak tighter. "Where will we go now?" "To my cousin's estate near Madrid," Raphael said. "He owes me a debt. He'll give us shelter." They rode in silence until they reached the edge of the city. The roads grew busier. Merchants, soldiers, peasants, all hurrying toward the capital. Sophia's heart beat faster. The noise and the grandeur unsettled her. "This place feels like another world," she said. "It is," Raphael replied. "One built on secrets." They entered through a side gate and followed a narrow street lined with white houses. Raphael stopped before an elegant residence hidden behind an iron gate. A servant opened the door, startled but respectful. "Don Raphael, we thought you were dead." "Not yet," Raphael said with a faint smile. "Tell your master I've come to collect a favor." The servant hurried away. Moments later, a tall man appeared, richly dressed, his expression wary. "Raphael, by heaven, what storm blows you here?" "The kind that leaves no shelter," Raphael said. "I need your help, Diego." Diego's gaze shifted to Sophia. "And who is this?" "My sister," Raphael said quickly. "We're traveling incognito." Diego raised a brow but said nothing. "Very well, you may stay, but the city is restless. The court changes loyalties by the day." Inside the house, Sophia marveled at the polished floors and grand portraits. She had never seen such wealth. Diego's wife greeted her politely, offering clothes more suitable for the city. That night there was a small gathering in the drawing room. Music played softly, while guests spoke of politics and rumor. Raphael kept close to Sophia, introducing her to no one. Yet one man watched her with growing curiosity, a distinguished noble with dark eyes and a calculating smile. When he approached, the crowd seemed to shift around him. "Don Raphael," he said smoothly, "you've brought new light to this dull room." "Marqués de Villacorta," Raphael said stiffly. "I didn't expect to see you here." The Marqués turned to Sophia. "And who is this lovely guest?" "My sister," Raphael said again. "A pity," Villacorta replied. "I was about to offer her a dance." Sophia gave a polite nod, her heart uneasy under his gaze. She excused herself and stepped onto the terrace. Raphael followed a moment later. "So you shouldn't draw attention," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to," she replied. "He frightens me." "He frightens everyone," Raphael muttered. "He's close to the court. If he learns who you are, Valdez will know within hours." They stayed only a few more days, moving carefully among the guests. But Valdez's shadow reached even there. One evening, Diego entered the salon with a letter sealed in black wax. He handed it to Raphael silently. Raphael broke the seal and read quickly. His face went rigid. "What is it?" Sophia asked. "Captain Valdez has arrived in Madrid," he said. "He's been given full authority to question anyone regarding the lost heir." Sophia's heart pounded. "Then he's here, in this city?" "Yes," Raphael said, "and the Marqués is his ally." That same night the Marqués hosted another gathering. The room shimmered with laughter and the clink of glasses. Sophia tried to remain unnoticed, but Villacorta approached her once again, smiling with deliberate charm. "Señorita," he said, "forgive my boldness, but your eyes, where have I seen them before?" "I wouldn't know, my lord," she replied, forcing a calm tone. He leaned closer. "I never forget faces, especially eyes like those. The color of the royal portraits, one might say." Her throat tightened. Raphael stepped between them. "My sister tires, my lord." Villacorta's smile deepened. "Of course. But humor me one question. Do you know Captain Valdez?" Sophia's breath caught. Raphael's hand closed around her arm. "Come," he said sharply. They left the room under dozens of watching eyes. Sophia's pulse hammered in her ears. "He knows," she whispered. "He saw it in me." Raphael didn't answer. They crossed the courtyard to the stable where 2 horses stood ready. "We leave now," he said. "But where?" "Anywhere he is not." Before she could reply, a shadow moved near the gate. Torches flared, and the sound of boots filled the air. A familiar voice rang out, hard and clear. "By order of the crown, no one leaves this estate without questioning." Raphael's face turned pale. Sophia froze. Captain Valdez stepped into the light, his eyes fixed on her. He bowed slightly and said, almost gently, "Good evening, Your Highness." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush breath. The torches flickered, their flames reflected in Valdez's cold eyes. Raphael stepped forward, placing himself between the captain and Sophia. "There's been some mistake," he said steadily. "The lady is my sister." Valdez's smile was thin. "You may fool the fools of the countryside, Don Raphael, but not me. Do you think I rode from Burgos to chase a merchant's sister?" He turned toward his men. "Seize them both." Steel flashed as soldiers stepped forward. Raphael moved fast, drawing his small dagger, the only weapon he had left. "You'll have to kill me first," he said. Valdez raised a hand. "No blood. Not yet. Take them alive." Raphael caught Sophia's wrist. "Run," he shouted. They bolted through the gate, pushing past startled servants. Arrows of light cut across the courtyard as torches swung wildly. Horses neighed, dogs barked, shouts echoed through the estate. Sophia's cloak snagged on a branch, and she stumbled. Raphael pulled her free. They raced into the garden, ducking between hedges and statues. Behind them, Valdez's voice roared, "After them! Don't let the girl escape!" They reached the stables. Raphael threw open the door and helped Sophia onto a horse. "Ride to the river, follow it north, I'll delay them." "No," she cried, "I won't leave you." He met her eyes briefly. "You must. They're not after me, they're after you." Before she could answer, soldiers burst into the yard. Raphael leapt onto another horse and charged, striking one man aside with the flat of his dagger. The animals reared, scattering hay and sparks. Sophia urged her horse forward, galloping through the open gate into the night. Raphael turned to face the captain. "You'll not have her," he said. Valdez's lips curved into a grim smile. "You'll die for her, then?" "If that's what it takes." They circled each other, the torches painting their faces in harsh light. Valdez lunged, but Raphael sidestepped, knocking the weapon from his hand. Before he could press his advantage, a soldier struck him from behind. He fell, his head hitting the ground. Valdez looked down at him, breathing hard. "Take him," he ordered. "Alive. He'll tell me where she's gone." Sophia rode until the city lights vanished behind her. The wind tore at her hair and tears blurred her vision. Every sound seemed to carry pursuit. When she reached the riverbank, she dismounted and led the horse into the shallows, walking against the current to hide her tracks. At last, exhausted, she stopped under a cluster of willows. The moon shone on the water, cold and pale. She sank to her knees, her body trembling. "They have him," she whispered. "They'll kill him because of me." But she remembered her mother's voice, soft and steady. "You must live." With that thought, she forced herself to move. She followed the river until dawn, then found refuge in a small shepherd's hut. The old man who owned it gave her milk and bread, asking no questions. 2 days later, word spread through the region. A nobleman had been arrested for aiding a traitor. Sophia knew it could only be Raphael. She couldn't stay hidden. She made her way toward Madrid, traveling on foot, her cloak torn and her face pale from sleepless nights. She kept her hood low and spoke to no one. When she reached the city, the streets buzzed with rumors. Crowds gathered near the palace gates. Soldiers were everywhere. She slipped through alleys until she reached the old convent where her mother had once sent alms. The gatekeeper, a kind-faced nun, looked at her curiously. "Child, you seem lost." "I seek sanctuary," Sophia said. "Please, I beg you." The nun nodded. "You may rest here. The world outside is cruel today." Inside, Sophia found quiet for the first time in weeks. But peace was impossible while Raphael was in danger. She paced the small cell, thinking, until an idea struck her. If Valdez wanted her alive, he would not kill Raphael. At least not until he found her. That meant time. She needed to find proof of who she was before Valdez could twist the truth. She remembered the royal blanket. The only evidence left. It was still hidden in the monastery. That night she confided in one of the younger nuns. "Sister, I must leave before dawn. There's something I must recover." "Child, the roads are unsafe," the nun whispered. "The soldiers—" "I must go," Sophia said. "A man's life depends on it." Before sunrise she slipped away, taking a borrowed horse. The journey back to the monastery took 2 days. When she reached the ruins, everything was as she had left it. The stones, the vines, The silence. She entered the chapel. Dust floated in the air. Near the altar she found the loose stone where her mother had hidden the blanket years ago. Her hands trembled as she lifted it. The silk shimmered faintly in the morning light. "This will save him," she whispered. But before she could hide it again, footsteps echoed outside. Sophia froze. She turned slowly. Captain Valdez stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 soldiers. "So?" he said softly. The lost heir returns to her cradle. Sophia clutched the blanket to her chest. "You followed me. Did you think I wouldn't?" His voice was calm, almost gentle. "I expected you to come here. Love always leads people back to where it began." She glared at him. "Where is Don Rafael?" "Alive, for now," Valdez said, "but the council grows impatient. They want answers. If you cooperate, I might convince them to spare him." "Spare him? He's done nothing wrong." "He defied the crown. That's treason enough." She stood tall despite the fear trembling through her. "You speak of the crown as if you wear it." Valdez's eyes hardened. "I serve those who protect it, or those who fear the truth," she said quietly. "If I am the king's daughter, then your masters will lose everything." His jaw tightened. "You know nothing of politics. You were hidden for your own good." "For theirs, you mean," she replied. "You're afraid of me." Valdez took a step forward. "Hand me the blanket and I'll take you to Madrid unharmed. Resist, and the soldier who tried to save you will hang by morning." Sophia's breath caught. The silk slipped slightly in her hands. "Let him go," she said, "and I'll come willingly." Valdez smiled thinly. "You have my word." She hesitated, then extended the blanket. His gloved hand closed around it. He studied the golden embroidery with satisfaction. "At last," he murmured. "The proof I needed." Sophia's heart sank. "Now free him as you promised." He looked up. "I said he would live. I didn't say when or where. You lied. Politics demands lies, Your Highness. You'll learn that soon enough." He turned to his men. "Take her." Sophia tried to run, but one soldier caught her arm. She struggled, shouting Raphael's name. Valdez watched in silence as they bound her hands. When she was forced onto a horse, she lifted her chin, refusing to cry. "You think you've won," she said. "But my mother taught me something you'll never understand." Valdez raised an eyebrow. "And what is that?" "That truth doesn't die just because men fear it." He mounted his own horse. "We'll see if you still believe that when you face the council." They rode toward Madrid under the grey sky. Sophia's heart ached for Raphael, somewhere in a cell because of her. But beneath the sorrow there was fire, her mother's courage, her father's blood. As the city gates came into view, the sound of distant bells reached them. Valdez turned toward one of his men. "Send word to the palace. Tell them the heir has been found." The soldier nodded and spurred his horse ahead. Sophia stared at the rising towers, her chains clinking softly. The road curved, and she caught sight of the palace on the hill, gleaming in the distance like a promise and a threat. Valdez smiled faintly. "Welcome home, Your Highness." The journey to Madrid lasted 2 days. The soldiers kept Sophia under constant watch, though Valdez treated her with cold civility. They rode by day and rested by night in roadside inns where she was confined to a small room under guard. Every mile drew her farther from the hills and vineyards of her childhood, farther from Isabel's memory and Raphael's voice. On the second morning, the city appeared on the horizon, vast and grey under a pale sun. Church bells rang faintly through the mist. Valdez rode beside her, his tone almost courteous. "I trust you'll behave with dignity before the council. They admire composure in their royalty." "I am not their royalty," Sophia said. "I'm only what your cruelty made of me." He ignored the rebuke. "Composure, Your Highness. It's the first lesson of power." At the city gates, the guards saluted and let them through. Crowds lined the streets, whispering as the convoy passed. Some made the sign of the cross, others spat in suspicion. Sophia held her head high, refusing to let them see her fear. They stopped at a grand house near the palace, its courtyard filled with soldiers. Valdez dismounted and gestured to a waiting officer. "Prepare her chamber. She's to be treated as a guest, not a prisoner." Sophia was led inside through marble corridors and rooms heavy with silence. Her chamber was richly furnished, but locked from the outside. A single window overlooked the square. From there she could see the royal palace shining in the distance like an unreachable dream. That night Valdez came to speak with her. He stood near the door, hands clasped behind his back. "Tomorrow, you'll face the council," he said. "They will question your claim. Be careful what you say. Truth and treason are sometimes the same in their eyes." "And what will you say, Captain?" she asked. "That you found a frightened girl hiding in the ruins her mother died to protect." He met her gaze. "I'll say what the crown requires." "Then you are no better than those who betrayed the king." His jaw tightened. "The king's betrayal began long before I was born. You're too young to understand what men do to keep peace." "There's no peace without justice," Sophia said quietly. Valdez turned to leave but paused at the door. "You remind me of him, you know. The same eyes, the same stubborn fire. Perhaps that's why you're dangerous." When he was gone, Sophia sat by the window, watching the torches flicker in the courtyard. She thought of Isabel's gentle voice, of Raphael's promise. Somewhere, he was alive, waiting for her, or dying because of her. At dawn, a maid brought her a gown of dark blue silk and a silver comb for her hair. "The council will see you soon, Senora," the girl said softly. "They've prepared the hall." Sophia dressed in silence. When the soldiers came, she walked between them without resistance. The corridors echoed with each step, until they reached the great chamber where the royal council sat. 5 men waited behind a long table, their faces stern beneath powdered wigs. Valdez stood to one side, the royal blanket folded before him like a trophy. An older man at the center spoke first. "You claim to be the daughter of His Majesty, King Fernando IV. "I claim nothing," Sophia said. "Others claimed for me. I only speak the truth my mother gave me." "And who was this mother?" "Isabel Ruiz, a widow from Castilla. She raised me as her own at the king's command." The council murmured. One man leaned forward. "You expect us to believe that His Majesty entrusted a royal infant to a peasant woman?" Sophia's voice did not tremble. "I expect you to believe that he was a man who knew love more than fear." Valdez stepped forward. "If I may, gentlemen, the evidence speaks for itself." He unfolded the royal blanket, laying it on the table. "This bears the royal crest. It was found in her possession." The council examined it. The eldest nodded slowly. "It is indeed the king's embroidery." Another asked, "Have we any witness to confirm her identity?" Valdez hesitated. "The woman who raised her is dead. The soldier who aided her is imprisoned for treason." Sophia stepped closer. "Then bring him. Let him speak." Valdez turned sharply. "You would use him as your defense?" "I would use truth," she said. "If you condemn me, condemn him also, for his only crime was loyalty." The council conferred in low tones. After a moment, the eldest raised a hand. "Bring the prisoner." A door opened at the far end of the hall. 2 guards entered, leading Raphael between them. His clothes were torn, his face bruised, but his eyes were bright with life. Sophia's breath caught. He met her gaze, and something unspoken passed between them. Relief, love, and the courage of shared suffering. The elder counselor looked at him. "State your name and service." "Don Rafael de la Vega, former captain of His Majesty's army." "You are accused of harboring a fugitive and deceiving the crown. What say you?" "I say I protected an innocent woman from injustice," Raphael replied. "If that's treason, then the word has lost its meaning." Valdez's voice cut through the hall. "You admit she is the woman sought by the crown." "I admit she is the daughter of the king," Raphael said firmly. "I saw the seal with my own eyes. I heard her mother's dying words." The room fell silent. The council exchanged glances. One of them murmured, "There may be truth in it." Valdez's expression darkened. "Be careful, gentlemen. The king's blood is not proven by sentiment. She could be an impostor sent by those who dream of rebellion." Sophia lifted her chin. "If I were an impostor, why would I surrender myself? Why not hide forever?" Her words carried through the chamber with quiet strength. Even the guards seemed to hesitate. The eldest counselor leaned forward again. "The council will deliberate. Until then, the woman will remain under guard. The prisoner is to be returned to his cell." Sophia took a step forward. "Please, let him stay. He has no part in this." But Valdez nodded to the guards. They dragged Raphael toward the door. Sophia's voice rose in desperation. "You promised he would live." Valdez looked at her coldly. "He lives, for now." When the door closed, Sophia turned to the council. You sit in judgment over the blood of kings, but you forget what it means to be human. I've lost a mother and a home for the sake of a secret I never chose. All I ask is mercy. For him, if not for me. The eldest looked weary. You will have our decision by sunrise. They dismissed her. She was led back to her chamber, where she paced through the night. The sound of rain began softly, pattering against the window. She prayed for Raphael's safety, for her mother's spirit to guide her, for justice to awaken in men who had long forgotten its face. At dawn, Valdez returned. He held a sealed parchment in one hand. His expression was unreadable. The council has ruled, he said. What do they demand? Sophia asked. They recognize your claim as possible, though not proven. You will remain in the custody of the convent until further evidence is found. And Don Raphael. Valdez hesitated. His sentence will be reconsidered once your lineage is confirmed. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. You mean they'll keep him in chains until I can prove what you already know? He didn't answer. He turned toward the window, watching the rain. You think me cruel, he said at last. But I've seen kingdoms fall for less than a secret like yours. If you truly love that man, pray they never make you queen. He motioned for the guards. Take her to the convent. She will be safe there. Sophia followed in silence, her heart torn between rage and sorrow. As the carriage rolled through the streets, she caught a last glimpse of the palace towers fading behind her. At the convent, the sisters received her kindly. They gave her a simple cell and a rosary. The world beyond its walls seemed to fade. Days turned into weeks. News from the city came in whispers, rumors of debate, of nobles divided over her claim. Sophia refused the comfort of titles or promises. She prayed only for Raphael's freedom. One evening, as the sun sank beyond the cloister, a young novice entered her cell. Señorita, a letter arrived for you. The guard brought it secretly. Sophia unfolded the paper with trembling hands. The handwriting was rough but familiar. My dearest Sophia, it read, if this reaches you, know that I live. Do not despair for me. Whatever they call you, princess, traitor, heir, remember the woman who raised you, not the blood that bound you. I would rather die free beside you than live behind the bars of a crown. Yours, Raphael. Her tears fell upon the ink, blurring the words. She pressed the letter to her heart and whispered, I'll find a way. I'll bring you back to me. That night, she dreamed of the vineyards and her mother's voice, gentle and clear. When she woke, dawn light streamed through the small window, and she knew what she must do. Sophia walked to the chapel, knelt before the altar and said aloud, If I am truly the king's daughter, then I renounce the throne. Let them keep their crown, but give me his freedom. At that very hour, bells began to ring in the city, slow, solemn, and heavy with meaning. A sister burst into the chapel breathless. Señorita, the council has spoken. Sophia rose, her heart pounding. Tell me, what did they decide? The sister clasped her hands together, her eyes shining. They have recognized you as the king's rightful child. Sophia felt the air leave her lungs. Then it's over? The nun nodded. It's over. You are free to choose your own path. Sophia's knees nearly gave way. She whispered Raphael's name, trembling with relief and fear of what the news might bring. Then, from the courtyard, came the sound of approaching hooves. A soldier dismounted and handed the abbess a sealed letter bearing the royal crest. She read it quickly, then turned to Sophia. The council awaits your answer, my lady, she said, but they also ask one thing in return. Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. And what is that? They request your signature to confirm the pardon of the man imprisoned in your name. Sophia's hand trembled as she reached for the quill. The parchment before her bore the royal seal in red wax, its edges curling slightly from the wax's heat. The abbess watched her with quiet reverence, as though witnessing history. They wish to test your mercy, the abbess said softly. Your signature will decide a man's fate. Sophia dipped the quill into the ink, her pulse quickening. No one should have to test mercy, she whispered. It should be freely given. The abbess nodded. Then sign, my child, and set him free. Sophia signed her name, Sophia Ruiz de Castilla, and pressed her hand over the seal. She felt tears sting her eyes as she spoke under her breath. For you, mother. For you, Raphael." The soldier took the parchment, saluted, and rode off toward Madrid. The nuns gathered around, murmuring prayers. For the first time in months, Sophia felt her heart steady. She had done what was right. 2 days later, a royal carriage arrived at the convent. The driver presented a letter. The abbess read it and turned to Sophia, her eyes shining. The pardon was accepted. Don Rafael de la Vega is free. Sophia pressed a hand to her mouth. He's alive. He is, and he asks to see you. The carriage took her through the countryside back toward Madrid. The roads, once threatening, now seemed brighter beneath the morning sun. She passed olive fields, rivers, and small villages that reminded her of home. At last, they reached a noble estate on the edge of the city. Soldiers saluted as the carriage stopped before a tall gate. A servant opened the door, bowing low. "My lady, Don Rafael awaits in the garden." Sophia's steps faltered as she crossed the gravel path. The garden was quiet except for the trickle of a fountain. Beneath an old fig tree stood Raphael. His clothes were simple, his face thinner, his arm still bound in a sling, but his smile was the same. She stopped a few paces away, her throat tightening. "You're alive," she managed to say. He bowed slightly. "By your hand, it seems. I thought they had—" He shook his head gently. "Not yet. When they brought your pardon, I thought it was a trick. Then I saw your signature." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "You kept your promise even when I couldn't keep mine." He took a slow step toward her. "You did more than keep it. You saved us both." They stood facing each other, the air between them heavy with all that had passed unspoken. "I heard the bells," he said. "They say the council has named you the rightful heir." "I refused it," she said quietly. "I renounced the title. I told them I wanted no throne." He stared at her, almost disbelieving. "You turned away a crown." "I never wanted power," she said. "Only peace. My mother's grave taught me what matters most." Raphael's voice softened. "Then what will you do now?" "I'll return to Castilla," she said. "To the house where she raised me. I'll rebuild it. I'll live as she wanted me to live." He smiled faintly. "A life among vineyards and quiet hills. That sounds like heaven. You'll come with me?" she asked, hesitating. "Or will you stay among these people who value titles more than hearts?" "I've had my share of titles," he said. "None worth keeping. If you'll have me, I'll follow wherever you lead." For a long moment they stood in silence, the fountain's murmur filling the air. Sophia's heart ached with relief, but also with something new, an unfamiliar lightness, the first stirrings of happiness. Before she could speak, footsteps sounded on the gravel behind them. A messenger in the royal livery approached, bowing low. "Your Highness," he said, ignoring Sophia's frown, "a summons from the council." "I told them I renounced the title," she said. The man kept his eyes down. "The council insists. They wish to honor your decision publicly and announce your pardon of Don Rafael. It would bring peace to the court and end the rumors." Raphael looked at her. "If it ends this madness, go. You have the strength to face them one last time." Sophia nodded. "Then I'll go, but not as their princess, as myself." The following morning she entered the great hall of the council again, this time unguarded. Valdez was there, standing apart from the others. His uniform was immaculate, his expression unreadable. The eldest councillor rose as she entered. "Lady Sophia, your name has been cleared. The court acknowledges your lineage, though you have renounced your claim. We ask only that you confirm your will before the witnesses of Spain." "I confirm it," Sophia said clearly. "I wish no crown, no title. Let my father's memory rest in peace, and let his people live without fear." A murmur spread through the hall. The councillor nodded solemnly. "Then may your words be recorded as law." He turned to Valdez. "Captain, you may address the court." Valdez stepped forward. His voice was steady, though his eyes flicked toward Sophia only once. "Her Grace has restored honor to the crown," he said. "Let no man speak against her. The matter is closed." Sophia regarded him silently. For all his pride, there was something weary in his face, a shadow of regret. When the ceremony ended, she approached him. "Was this your plan all along?" He gave a small, humorless smile. "My plan was to prevent a war. I did not expect to find a woman who shamed us all into peace." "Then let it end here," she said. "No more secrets. No more blood." He bowed. "As you wish, Your High, Lady Sophia." She turned and left the hall, her steps echoing against the marble. Outside, Raphael waited by the gate. When he saw her, he smiled. "Well?" he asked. "It's done," she said. "No more councils. No more crowns." "Then you're free," he said. She took a deep breath, the air crisp and bright after the gloom of the palace. "Yes, for the first time, I am." They left Madrid together that same afternoon. The road stretched wide before them, the autumn fields glowing gold under the sun. Raphael rode beside her, silent at first, as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace between them. At a crossroads, Sophia slowed her horse. "Do you ever think of what we've lost?" she asked. Raphael looked toward the horizon. "Sometimes. But then I remember what we've gained. Freedom, peace, and something neither of us had before. Each other." She smiled faintly. "My mother would have liked you. She already saved me," he said, "through you." As the sun began to sink, they reached the hill that overlooked Isabel's village. The vineyard stretched below, wild but familiar. Sophia dismounted and stood silently, taking in the sight. "She rests here," Sophia said softly. "I can almost feel her." Raphael removed his hat, bowing his head. "She'd be proud you kept your promise." Sophia knelt and touched the earth. "I kept her love," she whispered. They built a small fire that night near the ruins of Isabel's house. The stones still stood, weathered but strong. Raphael found a plank that could serve as a table, and Sophia laughed for the first time in months. When darkness fell, they sat beside the fire, speaking in low voices. "You could rebuild this place," Raphael said. "Plant vines again, start anew." "That's what I'll do," she said. "But not alone." He met her gaze, uncertain. "Are you asking me to stay?" "I'm asking you to live," she said. "Here, with me." Raphael's expression softened. He reached for her hand. "Then I'll live nowhere else." For a long time they sat in silence, listening to the crackle of the fire and the rustle of the vines in the wind. The stars began to show, faint and distant. Sophia leaned her head against his shoulder. "Do you think they'll let us be?" she asked. "They have no reason to chase us anymore," he said. "The kingdom has its peace. The rest belongs to us." She smiled. "Then it's enough." He took her hand and pressed it gently to his lips. "It's more than enough." But as the wind shifted, they heard the distant sound of hooves on the road again. Sophia lifted her head. "Someone's coming." Raphael stood, watching the dark path below. A single rider approached, carrying a lantern that flickered through the trees. "Stay here," he said quietly. Sophia rose beside him. "No, whoever it is, we face it together." The rider reached the edge of the clearing and stopped. The lantern's light revealed a familiar uniform. Valdez dismounted, his cloak billowing in the wind. Raphael tensed. "What now, Captain?" Valdez looked at them for a long moment before speaking. "I came to deliver a message." Sophia's voice was calm. "From the council? From the heart," Valdez said. "The past is buried. You are free to live as you choose. No one will disturb you again." She stared at him, uncertain whether to believe. "Why tell us yourself?" "Because I owed you that," he said quietly. "And because I wanted to see what peace looks like." He turned his horse and started down the hill, his lantern swaying in the dark. Sophia watched until he vanished into the trees. Raphael touched her arm. "It's truly over now." She looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then what comes next?" He smiled. "Whatever we build with our own hands." The fire crackled softly behind them as the night deepened, and in the distance, the sound of the river carried faintly through the quiet hills. The next morning broke with a quiet so pure that even the birds seemed to hesitate before greeting the dawn. Sophia rose early, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders, and stepped outside. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of earth and dew. The land that once felt like exile now felt like home. Raphael was already awake, mending a wooden beam near the corner of the old house. His sleeves were rolled up, his movements steady and patient. Sophia smiled as she watched him for a moment. "You work as if you've done this all your life," she said. He turned, brushing dust from his hands. "It's easier to rebuild a house than a kingdom, yet you do both," she replied lightly. "You've given me back mine." He looked at her, the sunlight catching his eyes. "No, you gave it to yourself. I only followed. They spent the day repairing what time and neglect had left behind. Sophia carried stones while Raphael cut wood, and together they worked until their hands ached and their laughter echoed across the valley. The villagers came out of curiosity first, then stayed to help. News had spread that the king's daughter had returned not as a queen, but as a farmer's daughter reborn. Old Matteo, the miller, brought tools. "Your mother's land still breathes," he said. "It's waiting for your touch." Children gathered near the fence watching her work. Sophia paused to smile at them. "Would you like to plant vines again?" she asked. The smallest boy nodded eagerly. "If you teach us." She knelt beside him, pressing a seed into the soil. "Then let this be the beginning." By late afternoon, the first row of vines stood planted. Raphael leaned on his spade, breathing hard but smiling. "You've turned the whole village into farmers again." "They never stopped being," she said. "They only forgot for a while." As the sun lowered, a group of travelers arrived on horseback, their clothes dusty, but their manners respectful. One stepped forward and bowed. "Lady Sophia of Castilla." She hesitated. "I no longer use that name." "Forgive me," the man said. "We come from Madrid. The council sends its gratitude and a gift." Raphael tensed, but Sophia gestured for calm. "What gift?" The man opened a small chest, revealing gold coins and a parchment sealed with the royal emblem. "A pension from the royal treasury, granted for your service to the peace of Spain." Sophia glanced at Raphael, then shook her head. "Tell them I thank them for their kindness, but I need no gold. Let it go to the widows of the war instead." The man looked surprised. "My lady, it is a great sum. Then it will do greater good in their hands," she said firmly. The messenger bowed deeply. "As you wish." When they left, Raphael smiled. "You just refused more wealth than most people dream of." "Because dreams built on gold end the moment it's spent," she said. "But these vines will live long after we're gone." That night, they sat by the small fire inside the house, the walls newly mended. The sound of crickets filled the air. Raphael poured her a cup of wine from the last remaining bottle Isabel had hidden years ago. "To your mother," he said, raising his glass. Sophia smiled. "To her courage." "And to yours," he added. She looked at him over the rim of her cup. "You think I have courage?" "I know it," he said softly. "You faced kings and captains, yet still speak like a woman who believes in hope. Hope is all that's left when fear has taken everything else." They fell silent for a while, the warmth of the fire between them. Outside, the wind rustled the vines they had planted together. Days turned into weeks. The house became a home again. The walls smelled of wood and new life. Sophia wrote letters to the convent, thanking the sisters for their kindness, and sent small parcels of food and wine to them each month. Raphael worked the land beside her, his strength returning with the rhythm of the days. But peace never lasted long in Spain. One evening, as the sun bled across the horizon, a carriage arrived at the village. The driver carried a banner with the royal crest. The villagers stopped their work and watched as the carriage approached Sophia's house. Two courtiers stepped down, both dressed in black and silver. The elder bowed low. "Lady Sophia, forgive our intrusion. The crown requests your presence once more." Sophia's stomach tightened. "I told them I renounced the title." "This is not about succession," the man said. "It concerns the stability of the realm. There are those who question the peace. They wish to see the rightful heir affirm her renunciation before the people, to quiet the unrest." Raphael stepped forward. "She has nothing to prove." The younger courtier frowned. "And you are a man who's seen enough of crowns to know they never bring peace," Raphael said sharply. Sophia placed a hand on his arm. "It's all right. If appearing once more will protect the people, I'll go." Raphael shook his head. "You owe them nothing." "I owe Spain the same thing my father did," she said quietly. "A chance to rest." The courtiers bowed again. "We leave at dawn." That night, Sophia and Raphael sat outside beneath the stars. "I don't trust them," he said. "Nor do I," she admitted. "But sometimes trust isn't what peace demands, only courage." He looked at her, the firelight flickering across his face. "If they try to keep you, I'll come for you." Sophia smiled sadly. "If they try to keep me, they'll find I've already left in spirit." Before dawn, she mounted her horse. Raphael stood beside her, his expression unreadable. "I'll wait here," he said, "and when you return, I'll be in the vineyard. I will return, she said firmly, this time for good. The ride to Madrid was quiet. When they reached the palace courtyard, Sophia dismounted. The council had gathered in the great hall once again. Valdez stood among them, his uniform more weathered, his hair streaked with grey. "You came," he said as she entered. "I half expected you to send a letter instead." "I came because I gave my word," she said. The eldest councillor rose. "Lady Sophia, the kingdom has entered a fragile peace. Some claim your renunciation was forced. Others demand you take your rightful place. To end this discord, we ask you to speak before the people. They must hear your choice from your own lips." Sophia looked around the hall. "And if I refuse?" "Then Spain will tear itself apart again," Valdez said quietly. "Men will use your silence to feed their ambitions." Sophia took a slow breath. "Then I will speak." That afternoon, the square before the palace filled with citizens. The air buzzed with tension. The church bells tolled as Sophia stepped onto the balcony overlooking the crowd. The wind tugged at her cloak. Valdez stood a few paces behind her, silent as stone. Sophia raised her hand for quiet. "People of Spain," she began, her voice clear and steady, "I was born not in a palace but in a cottage of stone. My cradle was not gold, but my mother's arms. I have seen enough of power to know it cannot heal the wounds of war." The crowd murmured. She continued. "I am the daughter of your king, but I will not be your queen. My father's reign ended with blood. Let mine end with peace. I give back the crown so that no more lives will be lost to it." For a moment silence held the square. Then slowly people began to applaud, softly at first, then louder until the sound rose like a tide. Valdez looked at her with something close to respect. "You've given them what they needed," he said. "What about what I need?" she asked quietly. He hesitated. "Freedom. You've earned it. No one will come for you again." Sophia looked toward the horizon, where the hills of Castilla waited beyond the city walls. "Then let me go home." Valdez nodded. "Go, and may peace finally follow you." By nightfall, Sophia was on the road again, the lights of Madrid fading behind her. She rode hard through the night until the fields appeared once more, the vines, the hills, the little stone house that had waited in silence. The door was open, light spilling out. Raphael stood in the doorway, his face breaking into a smile as he saw her. She slid from her horse, breathless and trembling. "You came back," he said softly. "I told you I would," she replied. He stepped forward, taking her hands. "It's truly over?" "It is," she said. "Spain is at peace, and so am I." Raphael's eyes softened. "Then welcome home." But before she could answer, the church bells of the village began to ring, sharp and sudden, echoing through the valley. Sophia froze, her pulse quickening. Raphael turned toward the sound. "Those aren't bells of celebration," he said. Sophia's heart pounded. "Then what are they?" He looked toward the hills, his face darkening. "Warning bells." The bells rang wild across the valley, rolling through the air like thunder. Sophia and Raphael ran to the doorway, straining to see through the rising mist. The villagers were already in the road, calling to one another. A young boy came sprinting from the square, his face pale with fear. "Riders!" he shouted. "Strangers on the ridge!" Raphael's hand went instinctively to his belt, though he carried no weapon now. "Stay inside," he told Sophia. "I'll go see." "I'm coming with you," she said. He hesitated. "Sophia, I've run enough in my life," she said firmly. "We'll face whatever comes together." They hurried down the path toward the square. Villagers clustered near the church steps, some clutching tools, others torches. The air smelled of smoke and fear. Over the ridge, dark shapes appeared, half a dozen riders, cloaked and silent. The villagers whispered. "Are they soldiers?" someone asked. "No banners," Raphael murmured. "They're not from Madrid." The riders slowed as they entered the square. Their leader, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, dismounted first. He removed his hat and bowed. "We mean no harm," he said. "We seek Lady Sophia." The villagers parted, murmuring. Sophia stepped forward. "I am she." The man bowed again. "My lady, forgive our arrival without warning. We bring word from the south. The French have crossed the border again. The regent calls for unity. Your name, though you renounced your title, is being used to rally both sides." Sophia's heart tightened. "Then the peace is broken." "Not yet," the man said quickly. But it will be, unless you speak again. The people trust you. They call you the daughter of Castile. Raphael stepped beside her. She gave up the crown. She owes them nothing more. The man looked at him. Perhaps. But if she stays silent, Spain will tear itself apart again. Sophia turned to Raphael. If my words can stop bloodshed, I must try. He searched her face, then nodded slowly. Then I'll go with you. By dawn, they rode south with the small group of messengers. The road was rough, the air thick with the scent of rain. They stopped at villages along the way where people gathered to see her. Farmers knelt in the fields as she passed. Mothers held their children high, whispering prayers. Each village brought more questions. Was she returning to rule? Would she march against the invaders? Sophia gave only one answer. I will not rule, nor will I fight. I will speak for peace. At last, they reached the city of Toledo. The streets were crowded with soldiers and civilians alike, their faces drawn with worry. The governor received her in a dim hall lined with banners. My lady, he said, bowing, your presence alone may save us. The men are ready to fight, but they hesitate. They fear this will be another war of kings. If you tell them it is for Spain, not for thrones, they'll stand. Sophia's voice was calm. Then I'll tell them the truth, that no throne is worth a single drop of their blood. That evening, she stood before the crowd in the cathedral square. The bells rang slow and solemn. Men, women, and children filled the space below, their faces turned upward. My people, she began, her voice carrying clear and strong. You've suffered enough. I was born of a king's blood, but raised by a woman who had none. And it was she who taught me the meaning of honor. Spain does not need kings. It needs hearts that love her more than themselves. The crowd murmured, listening. She continued, her words rising like the wind. If war comes, defend your homes, your children, your dignity. But not for my name. I renounce it forever. Let there be no more crowns, only peace among those who live from this land. For a moment, the square was silent. Then a cheer broke out, spreading until the whole crowd roared. People wept, shouting her name, not as a princess, but as a daughter of the soil. Raphael watched from the edge of the square, pride and fear mingling in his chest. When she descended from the steps, he took her hand. You've done it again, he said quietly. You've given them hope. She smiled faintly. I pray it's enough. But before the cheer had faded, a messenger pushed through the crowd. Captain Valdez, he shouted. He rides here with orders from the capital. Sophia's heart leapt. Valdez? The messenger nodded. He brings news of a treaty. The invasion has halted. The council wishes to meet with you one last time to seal the peace publicly. Raphael frowned. You don't owe them that. Perhaps not, she said, but I must see it finished. They left for Madrid the next morning. Along the road, villagers threw flowers in their path. Raphael rode close beside her, his hand never far from hers. When this is done, he said softly, promise me no more journeys. I promise, she said. By the time they reached the capital, the city had changed. Flags of both kingdoms hung side by side. Soldiers no longer patrolled the streets. The council awaited her in the same chamber where she had once been accused of treason. Valdez was there, older now, his expression weary. My lady, he said, bowing, this time I come not as an enemy. I never thought of you as one, Sophia replied. He smiled faintly. You were wiser than I deserved. The eldest councillor stepped forward. The peace treaty is signed. Spain stands united. We owe that to your courage. Sophia shook her head. You owe it to every mother who buried her son. I was only their voice. Valdez cleared his throat. There is one matter left. The people wish to see their peacemaker honored before she returns to her home. We ask that you stand upon the palace steps and bless the new flag. Sophia hesitated. If it will bring peace to their hearts, I'll do it. The ceremony took place that evening. The square was filled with thousands, soldiers, nobles, and villagers alike. As Sophia stepped onto the marble steps, the new flag was raised, the crown replaced by a laurel branch, symbol of unity. The crowd bowed as she lifted her hands. May Spain never bow to fear again, she said, her voice ringing across the square. Let her children work, love, and live in peace. The cheers that followed shook the city. Valdez watched silently, a rare softness in his eyes. When the crowd began to disperse, he approached her quietly. "I've seen many oaths sworn in these halls," he said. "None spoken with more truth." "Then let it last," Sophia said. "It will," he replied. "And I think your father would have been proud." Sophia's throat tightened. "You knew him?" Valdez nodded. "I was a young soldier in his service. He was stubborn and brave, much like his daughter." For once his smile held no irony. He bowed deeply and stepped back. That night the council hosted a simple supper in her honor. Raphael sat beside her, quiet, his hand brushing hers beneath the table. When the meal ended, Valdez raised his glass. "To the woman who ended what kings began." The room echoed with applause. Sophia blushed, lowering her eyes. "May no one ever have to end such a thing again," she said softly. Later, when the hall emptied, Raphael led her outside to the courtyard. The moon hung low over the city. "It's finished," he said. "Truly finished." Sophia looked up at the sky. "Then tomorrow, we go home." They left Madrid at dawn, the road stretching golden under the rising sun. This time there were no soldiers, no banners, only the sound of their horses and the wind through the fields. When they reached the village, the people gathered once more, not in fear, but in joy. Mateo met them at the gate. "The vines are growing strong," he said proudly. "You've brought peace not just to Spain, but to us." Sophia smiled. "Then I've kept my promise." Raphael helped her down from the horse. "It's time to rest." She nodded. At last. That night, the village celebrated beneath strings of lanterns. Music filled the square, and laughter replaced the echo of old fears. Children danced barefoot in the dust. Sophia and Raphael stood at the edge of the crowd, watching. "Do you think she would have liked this?" Raphael asked quietly. Sophia looked toward the stars. "My mother. Yes, she would have said the world finally remembered how to breathe." The music swelled. Raphael extended his hand. "Then breathe with me." She laughed softly and took his hand. They joined the dance, moving with the simple rhythm of joy. Around them the people sang, their voices rising with hope. As the night deepened, the firelight flickered over Sophia's face, and she looked at Raphael, the man who had risked everything for her, the life they had both fought to claim. He leaned closer. "Tomorrow, we plant again." "Yes," she whispered. "Tomorrow." The bells of the church rang once more, slow and steady, no longer warning but calling the village to peace. For the first time in years, Sophia felt her heart completely still. The kingdom was whole, her promise fulfilled. The weight of the past had finally lifted. She looked into Raphael's eyes and said almost to herself, "Now I can begin to live." The spring of the following year arrived early. The snow on the hills melted fast, and the vines in Sophia's fields stretched with new life. Each morning the air smelled of earth and promise. Raphael worked beside her, their hands brushing as they planted, their laughter echoing softly across the valley. By now the house stood strong again. The roof no longer leaked, the windows held sunlight, and the sound of Isabel's old bell hung by the door, ringing each time the breeze passed through. It was no longer the widow's cottage of sorrow, but a home filled with quiet joy. One evening, after a long day in the fields, Sophia stood by the well, washing the dust from her hands. The sun dipped behind the hills, casting gold across her hair. Raphael approached, carrying 2 cups of wine. He set them down and leaned against the stone wall. "You've worked enough for one day," he said. "I could say the same of you," she replied, smiling. "You've been mending fences since dawn." "Then we're both guilty," he said. "Sit. The world can wait." She sat on the low wall beside him, the wind lifting a strand of her hair. The valley glowed in the fading light. Raphael poured the wine, handed her a cup, and for a moment they drank in silence. "You know," he said finally, "I sometimes wake at night thinking all this will vanish, that I'll open my eyes and find myself in some prison cell again, dreaming of a life I never had." She looked at him, her gaze soft. "Then I'll remind you that this is real. The earth, the vines, the peace, it's ours now." He smiled faintly. "And you? What about me? Sometimes I still can't believe you stayed here, that you didn't choose the court or the city or a life that matched your birth." Sophia shook her head gently. "My birth brought nothing but danger. My mother gave me the only life worth having. I'd rather be a peasant in peace than a princess in chains." He studied her face for a long moment, then reached for her hand. "Do you ever miss it? The power, the glory, the attention?" "No," she said simply. "I've learned the only crown worth wearing is made of love." The evening deepened around them, the air soft and warm. Fireflies began to flicker near the vines. Sophia leaned her head against his shoulder, and he let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "I never thanked you," she murmured. "For what? For keeping your promise to my mother. For saving me when I couldn't save myself." Raphael's hand tightened around hers. "You saved me first, Sophia. The day you looked at me in that monastery and refused to give up. You brought me back from a life that had lost its meaning." She lifted her eyes to his. "Then perhaps we saved each other." He smiled. "I suppose we did." The quiet stretched between them again, soft and full. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang from the church. Raphael turned toward her, his voice lower now. "There's something I've wanted to say since the day we first met." She looked up, surprised. "Then why wait?" "Because I wanted to earn the right to say it." "And have you?" "I hope so." He paused, searching her face. "When I saw you that first day by the olive grove, I thought you were the most beautiful thing the earth had ever made. And every day since I've thought the same." Sophia laughed softly. "You were supposed to be guarding me, not admiring me." "I did both," he said, "but I failed at one." "Which?" He took her hand again, pressing it gently to his chest. "Guarding my own heart." Her breath caught. "Raphael," he shook his head. "No, listen. I've lived half my life for duty, for orders, for others. But when I look at you, I see everything I never dared dream of. I don't care about your name or the blood in your veins. I only care about the woman who planted vines in the ashes of her past." She was silent for a long moment, her eyes glistening. Then she whispered, "And I thought I'd never hear those words." He frowned slightly. "Why?" "Because I thought no man could love a woman with such a burdened name." He smiled. "Then I must be a fool." "You're no fool." "Then perhaps I'm simply in love." She laughed softly, tears shining now. "And what do you expect me to say to that? That you'll forgive my clumsy words?" She leaned closer. "There's nothing to forgive." The wind stirred the vines, and the world seemed to pause. When Raphael spoke again, his voice trembled slightly. "Sophia, will you marry me?" Her breath caught again. "Marry you? I know it's sudden," he said quickly, "but I can't imagine another season without you by my side. I've already asked the priest. He said he'd bless the union whenever you wished." Sophia looked at him in disbelief, then smiled through her tears. "You truly planned all this?" "I planned nothing," he said. "I just couldn't keep the words inside anymore." She reached up, touching his face. "And if I say yes, then you'll make me the happiest man who ever lived." Her hand slid down to his. "Then yes." Raphael froze, hardly daring to breathe. "Yes?" "Yes," she said again, laughing softly. "I'll marry you." He pulled her into his arms, and the world disappeared. The fields, the house, the fading sun, all faded into the quiet rhythm of their hearts. When they finally drew apart, Sophia's eyes sparkled like the stars just beginning to rise. "Then it's settled," she said. "Tomorrow we tell the village." He smiled. "Tomorrow I'll ring every bell in Castilla." The next day, the news spread faster than wind. The villagers gathered in the square, bringing flowers, bread, and laughter. Even old Mateo wept as he blessed them both. "Your mother would be proud," he said, his voice rough. "She prayed for this day, even when she thought she'd never live to see it." The wedding was simple. The priest stood beneath the olive tree beside the house. Sophia wore a dress she had sewn herself, white linen with a small ribbon at her waist. Raphael wore his old uniform coat, cleaned and mended, with the insignia removed. He said it felt lighter that way. The entire village came. Children carried candles, and the women sang softly as Sophia walked down the path. The air smelled of rosemary and spring rain. When she reached Raphael, he took her hands. "I have no dowry to give," he said quietly. "Only a heart that's been yours since the first day I saw you." She smiled. "And I have no crown to offer, only love that will never waver." The priest raised his hands. "Then what God joins, let no man divide." When Raphael kissed her, the bells began to ring. The villagers cheered, tossing flower petals into the air. Sophia laughed through her tears, her hands still in Raphael's. That night, the celebration lasted until the stars burned bright above the valley. Music filled the air, and for the first time in years, Spain seemed to forget its sorrows. Sophia danced barefoot on the grass, her laughter carrying over the fields. Raphael watched her, unable to look away. When the music slowed, he found her near the vines they had planted together. "Do you remember the day we first worked this soil?" he asked. "How could I forget? You told me vines were like people. They grow best when they've endured storms." He smiled. "And you proved it true." She touched one of the new shoots, tender and green. "They'll bear fruit this year. So will we," he said softly. She turned to him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" He took her hand and placed it over her heart. "Whatever the seasons bring, we'll face them together. That's fruit enough." She smiled, tears rising again. "You speak as if I were still the princess you once protected." He shook his head. "You're far more than that. You're the woman who taught a soldier how to live again." The music began once more, slow and sweet. Raphael drew her close. They swayed together under the stars, the rhythm of their steps matching the rhythm of their hearts. As the night deepened, the villagers drifted away, leaving only the two of them and the soft murmur of the wind. Raphael traced his fingers along Sophia's cheek. "Are you happy?" he asked. "I am," she whispered. "More than I ever thought I could be." He smiled. "Then I have kept my word." "And which one was that?" "To protect you." Sophia laughed softly. "You've done far more than that." He tilted his head. "What have I done?" "You've loved me," she said simply. The stars shimmered above them, and the vines swayed gently in the night breeze. Raphael kissed her forehead, his voice low. "Then my life has been worth living." She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "And mine has just begun." The next morning dawned golden and clear. Sophia woke to the sound of the bell outside their door. Raphael was already up, tending the fire. He turned as she entered, smiling. "Good morning, my wife," he said. She blushed at the word. "Good morning, my husband." He handed her a piece of bread, still warm from the oven. "The first meal of our life together." She took it, laughing. "You'll spoil me." "That's my intention," he said. The days that followed were filled with quiet joy. They worked side by side in the fields, shared meals beneath the olive tree, and watched the sunset paint the hills. The vines flourished heavy with grapes that promised a fine harvest. In late summer, when the fruit ripened, they held a feast for the village. Sophia poured the first bottle of their wine into a single cup and handed it to Raphael. "Taste it," she said. He drank and smiled. "It's sweet." "Like life should be," she said. The villagers cheered as they drank together, the sound of laughter ringing through the evening air. Children danced between the vines, and the bell of Isabel's house rang once more, not in warning but in joy. As twilight settled, Sophia stood beside Raphael, looking out over the land. "Do you ever think of Madrid?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not once. The only kingdom I care for is here," she smiled. "Then let it be our kingdom." He took her hand. "And you, my queen?" She laughed. "No crowns, remember?" "Then my heart will do," he said. The last light of day faded, leaving the valley bathed in silver moonlight. Sophia leaned against him, her voice soft. "Do you think peace will last?" "For us it already has," he said. "The rest of the world will follow when it learns what we did. That love is the only thing worth fighting for." She looked up at him, her eyes shining. "Then we've won," he smiled. "Forever." And as the moon rose higher, their laughter mingled with the song of the wind through the vines, carrying the sound of love and peace into the endless night. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.